Hi everyone, welcome to the channel, and I am here for a top 5 list video for you guys. Now, since we're now in the year 2021, I thought it would be interesting to go over some anniversaries for some albums. And these 5 albums in this video are turning 40 this year. These albums came out in the year 1981. And this list is in no particular order or anything, so just keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and begin, and I think we'll start off by talking about some Iron Maiden. And the album from Iron Maiden we are talking about is Killers, of course from Paul Di'Anno's era. And I will be honest, this is not one of my favorite Iron Maiden albums. As a matter of fact, it probably is my least favorite of their 80s material, which I know is rather unpopular, but I don't know. When it comes to the 80s Iron Maiden albums, this is just the one that I go to the least. It just doesn't have that same replay value as the other albums of the 80s. But there is some good stuff on this album, though. I think the title track is maybe my favorite song on the album. There is some catchy songs on this album. Yeah, it's not one of their best, but I still think it's a pretty solid album overall for what it is. So, Killers by Iron Maiden, this album had to make the list. Next, we're talking about some Black Sabbath, of course, in Dio's era. Mob Rules, and yeah, this is not one of Black Sabbath's best albums. In my opinion, when it comes to the best Black Sabbath albums, they would be Ozzy's era from the 70s, but this album, it's pretty solid for the most part. I mean, there's some good stuff on this album. I think Dio, with his contribution with the band during this time, I think he did a pretty good job. I really like songs like Turn Up the Night, Sign of the Southern Cross, Falling Off the Edge of the World. Over and Over, I think, is an underrated album closer from Black Sabbath. Not a song that's recognized enough, I feel like. I just really like how doomy and dark that song is. I mean, it's a really cool song, but yeah, so this album, I think it's good. I mean, yeah, it's not one of the best Black Sabbath albums, but I still think it's very solid. So, Mob Rules by Black Sabbath. Next album up, we got Van Halen, Fair Warning. And this album, it really is just solid front to back. I mean, this is one of those albums that is maybe a 10 out of 10 album. I mean, the lowest I'd give it is at least a 9 out of 10. I mean, that just goes to show how great this album is. I mean, there's a lot of great songs on this album, like Mean Street, Dirty Movies, Hear About It Later, Unchained. I mean, these are some favorites of mine on the album, and this is maybe my favorite Van Halen album. I don't know. I mean, it is one of their heavier albums, too, and I dig it. I really like this album. I mean, everything about this album is fantastic, so yeah. Van Halen, of course, one of the best rock bands of all time, at least I would say, but Fair Warning by Van Halen, this album had to make the list. It's just fantastic. Okay, so next we got Def Leppard, High and Dry, and this is a very solid album and definitely a classic. I actually know some people that say that this is the last good Def Leppard album, which, I mean, people are going to have their opinions, but I personally think that's insanity. So it's like, you mean to tell me that, you know, they've only had a couple good albums? I don't know, that just seems a little absurd to me. I mean, I think the other albums of their 80s time especially are really solid, even if they're, you know, more synth-driven or, you know, poppy or whatever. I personally don't mind that, but this is a very good album still. I mean, it's very solid. I mean, Another Hit and Run, Bringing on the Heartbreak, On Through the Night. I mean, there's a lot of great songs on this album, but yeah, I really like this album. I would say it's one of Def Leppard's best. I mean, Def Leppard, really great band, and yeah, definitely a solid album. So, High and Dry by Def Leppard. Okay, so last for this list, I mean, this is one of those albums that you know had to be on the list. This is maybe one of my favorite albums of all time from one of my favorite bands of all time. And the band is Rush, and the album I am talking about is Moving Pictures. And I would say that this is maybe Rush's best album. I mean, I personally would say it is, I think. I don't know, some days I say 2112 is the best, but I don't know. I think most days I do say Moving Pictures is the best Rush album. I mean, the 80s era of Rush was really strong. I mean, definitely very good, but yeah, I would say that this is their best album. I mean, there's not a single weak song on this album, but some highlights would be Tom Sawyer, Red Barchetta, Limelight, Camera Eye. You also got Vital Signs, which is really good song, but yeah, definitely a very solid album. I mean, this album is basically a near masterpiece of an album, but yeah, not as proggy as their 70s material, but I mean, it's still a very great album. So Moving Pictures by Rush, great album. This album had to make the list. So there you have it. That is a list of what I personally think are the top 5 best albums of 1981. So let me know what you think. Are there any albums that you can think of that came out in 1981 that you would consider one of the best? So feel free to let me know. And what do you think of my picks for the top 5? So with that being said, thanks for watching. Have a nice day and take care.